All right, this is my buddy June, and this is her roadmap to success video. Yes, you're sitting in a kind of a weird spot. All right, so I'm going to go through kind of start at the beginning and kind of go through linearly what we covered. We started off by going over the importance of using marker words. We established a marker word of yes. Remember, you should have been, by the time you see this, you should have walked around your place saying yes, treat, yes, treat. You know you're done loading when you say yes and she looks up at you. Remember to compartmentalize your movements. So if I'm going to tell her to sit, I'm going to say sit. Keep my hands here. When she sits, I say yes. Then I reach for my treat pouch. Then I deliver the treat. So make sure you don't say yes as you're reaching your pouch or start delivering the treat. Each one is its own separate action. It'll just help your dog better understand what's going on. We also went over hand targeting. There will be a video on the page above on how you can teach that. Practice that one. She got that one really quickly, but it's a nice, easy way to lure them around. Remember the concept of introducing a cue. First, there's the cue. There's 4 parts to introducing a cue. The cue, the label, sit. Number 2 is the action, the dog sitting. Number 3 is the marker, saying yes. And number 4 is the payment, the pet, the treat, or the affection. But remember, when you're teaching a dog a new cue, we're just going to lure them into position and use the marker word only without using the cue at first. We only use the cue when we're 90% certain when I say the cue, the dog is going to do the action. And the way we do that is warming the dog up. We did for hand targeting. We went yes, 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 boop, yes. So remember, the cue always comes first. When you were walking her to the door, you were sometimes saying, touch your nose and walking there and then saying door. Sometimes you're saying door in the middle. So you want to say door, touch the treat to your nose, walk her over there. Now, if you're walking her from the kitchen area, I would have the treat in your left hand, say door, touch it, and then turn so when you're walking, she's kind of going to walk more in a path directly towards the area that you want her to be. If you have it in your other hand, she's going to gravitate more towards your orange lamp in your living room. Okay, so let me see. After that, we went over importance of celebrating. Now, for dogs that bark, celebrating, a lot of people say that's great, but I don't see the connection. It is 100% connected because she's barking for attention. She's barking for other reasons as well, but barking for attention, we need her to extinguish that behavior so that she understands barking no longer gets my attention. So if she barks, do not tell her no, don't look at her, don't exhale, don't put a dirty look on your face, just ignore her. But celebrate every time she sits, comes, lays down, eye contact, drinks water, drops a ball, anything that you find desirable, get in the habit of consistently doing that. Also remember the manners lesson. The manners is the I want chicken nuggets. So if she comes up and barks at you or nudges you or paws at you, you're going to tell her to sit one time. We'll talk about sit in a sec. If she sits, hey sweetie, yes. That's celebrating right there. If she sits, then you say yes and pet her. If she doesn't sit, then you go on to doing something else. You're not punishing her, or we're not giving her a reward. She only gets the reward for doing the thing you want. Now, I think that she has, this is sit for her, not the word sit. So fading the lure, and this is what you would do for hand target or anything else, you would say sit as you raise your hand like you normally do. She sits, you say yes and give her the treat. Take a step back so she gets out of a sit. Repeat that 4 or 5 times in a row, and you want to go bang, 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 bang. And then the 5th or 6th time you say sit without raising your arm. She sits, yes, and give her a treat. Take a step back, sit, she does it again, yes. So I always say it once, and if she doesn't do it, then I go back to luring and using the marker word. Yes. And so that's the beauty of the marker word. We should be 100% accurate because we're only saying it when the dog does the action. Okay, so make a list of all the official cues and then say vocabulary to each other if you're using a different word other than the word that is the official word to come or sit or down. Sit, sit. Yes. Also remember with your marker word, half of how dogs learn is when they have a marker word established is not being rewarded when they don't do the right action. So if you tell her sit and she lays down or doesn't do it, don't give her a pet or a treat and don't repeat the word again. Then next time you want to do it, I would lure her into the position, say yes when she does it, and remember start saying sit and then lure her through it. If you have questions on that, let me know, but I think hopefully that explains it pretty easily. Let me see, celebrating and the manners game are kind of 2 sides of the same coin. So point at each other, say celebrate, and point at each other, say manners. So celebrating is when she chooses to do things you like. Manners is when she's doing things you don't like, demanding attention by barking at you. I told you to ignore it, which you would, but for the bark, I want you guys to do is she comes up and demand barks, you're gonna tell her to sit one time. If she sits, yes, and you pet her. If she doesn't sit, just go back to doing what you're doing. Now, you can do what's called a negative punishment for the barking. Hey, thank you. June, thank you. Good job. That didn't work for her. June, there's nobody out there. Hey. Now, if she does that and I give her a treat, then that can be rewarding the behavior. So I have treats out kind of as a distraction. And I guess I forgot about the positive interrupter because it's a new way of putting in a new order. So remember, the positive interrupter is going, so she's looking, boop, yes. Now you're going to either say, or beep, 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 or puppy, puppy, puppy. Whichever one of those works best. If you're going to use the beep, 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 or the puppy, make sure you repeat it 3 or 4 times. So the smooch is a, it's like I'm trying to draw a shake through a frozen straw. So it's not a whole bunch of that. It's, so again, if you see that she hears something and she's about to start barking, say, she looks at you, go, boop. She runs over, touches her nose, your hand, yes, give her a treat, and then run back in the back bedroom. So you run away, that's going to spike her wanting to chase you, and she's going to forget about what's at the door. She runs up there, and then you take her to the door. Maybe you close the door, and your partner goes and opens the door and lets the person in. The video above is going to talk about, I'm going to talk a little bit about the end, about that video. Do a mark when you're doing this. Look at the timestamp of this video because it's a longer video, so you can jump to the section you need. All right, we also went over dog consent and cutoff signals. Watch that one. Remember, she seemed to prefer it when you petted her here on her throat or on her chest versus here. And again, watch for those cutoff signals with all sorts of activities you do. So when she says, I don't like something, if you pull back and stop, that's going to make her feel more comfortable. That's going to settle her down. Part of the barking comes from kind of being a little bit on edge, expecting somebody to come through. Part of the barking like that comes from my humans. I get to tell them what to do, and they do it. So in terms of nudging or barking for attention, yes. And so that kind of confuses me into thinking that I have a leadership role here. And a lot of people don't tell their dog what activities they want to do, and the dog thinks my job is to be the security dog. So that's why celebrating works so hard, because it helps her know that these are the things that get attention. Now you do have the chair at the corner is the guard dog chair. It gives her a good vantage point. She's in a heightened position. She gets to see people coming up and she barks at them. And it's right next to the door. I would probably make that chair off limits because it's absolutely correlated to her barking. And she's gonna see it and she's like there waiting for it to happen. So part of dog training is we wanna prevent the dog from practicing unwanted behaviors. Since he's in the habit of waiting at that door in that chair, I think removing access to that chair will be helpful. Now they make things called X-Mats, which is really not in line with what I do because it is a bit of a punishment device, but it's activated by the dog. They're basically plastic trays that you open up that have tiny little nubs on them that don't feel good to lay on. And so you can lay one of those on the chair. That will probably stop her from getting out of that chair. At the same time, I would get a dog bed maybe somewhere else in the room. You have a very nice little cozy place. The place I like to put it is right in front of the TV, but I don't know if that would work for you guys. So you maybe have... you have tight quarters, so it makes it a little bit of a challenge. But I would try to avoid having her there because, again, that's the most proximate place to the door, and it's going to just help her practice all the stuff that you don't want her doing. We also talked about getting her a little bit more exercise. You guys do a good job of exercising, but I would get a snuffle mat. The one that I showed you is called a Rundick. I believe it's Rundick. I've worked with a lot of different snuffle mats. That's the one I like the best. Every time I get it, I flip it over upside down so the tassels are going down, flip it right side up, and then I waterfall. I just drop the food on, and it kind of goes in between the crevices on their own. Now, right now you're doing what's called free feeding by leaving the food out, and that creates an issue where they a lot of times only eat late at night, but it also lowers the value of the food, and it also changes my perception of the humans. I see the human providing me the food on a daily basis. I have a little bit more respect engendered because I count on that. If it's always in the bowl, I kind of think of it as the magic bowl. So when it's time to eat, go feed her, put food in her bowl, get a couple chips or cracker or something. You eat a couple bites as well. Invite her to eat. If you want to come up with a funny word like lasagna, so have her sit and then put the food in her bowl and say lasagna, tap the bowl, she comes over to eat it. Now, as soon as she walks away from the bowl, she's saying, I'm done. And just like the wild, what we're going to do is we're going to pick that bowl up, we're going to dump it empty, and we're going to put the empty bowl back down so she's going to walk by and see that bowl is empty. And she's gonna do that over and over again. Most of the time they go lick the bowl because they recognize the food has disappeared. So you're gonna try to feed her twice a day. 3 times a day would be ideal if you can swing it, but I don't know if it'll work for your schedule. So the morning and the evening. And there's no sympathy if she doesn't eat, or no remorse. It's not a bad thing. She's choosing not to eat. That's different than you withholding food, which is not cool. So eventually, most dogs, well, not eventually, but most dogs do not start eating until lunch or dinner of the 3rd day. If you blink, you're going to reinforce it. Hunger becomes your ally. You're giving her an opportunity to eat. She's choosing not to is different than you withholding the food. Now, you can do a little bit of the training methods we talked about here earlier. When I'm trying to lose weight, the person whose plan I do, he wants me to eat 5 times a day, smaller meals. That spikes my metabolism. So sometimes doing a little bit of training in the middle of the day if she's not eating her food will help give her a little bit more appetite to want to eat her food. So I would get to the point where when you put the food down, she comes and eats before you switch to a snuffle mat. And have a couple days of that before you switch to the snuffle mat. Now, if she's only eating half of her food, start feeding her half of her food so she gets used to eating all of the food in the container. Once she does that consistently, then you maybe add 60% of her food, 65, 70, work your way up to whatever amount of food she's supposed to get. But that way we get her conditioned to eating all of her food properly. And again, it'll help her have a little bit more respect for you, which will have a diminishing effect on the demand barking and some of the alert barking. Let me see. You guys are doing a good job on rules. So yeah. Now whatever the timestamp is, look at this right now and write this down so you can jump to this point in the future. So the door. So I was a little bit disappointed. I should have done a little bit more asking of questions because I really like people to be like, wow. And you guys had already done what I did for the door, but you hadn't done the other steps. So remember, think of it as A to Z. So step A is just going to put the painter's tape down on the floor, make a little box where you want her to be in there. So the first step is just leading her to that box from all sorts of different parts of your house, because that's what's going to happen. She's going to be over here. She hears somebody at the door. She rushes towards the door. Now we're having her stop before she gets to the door. We're teaching her the behavior we want her to offer when somebody comes to the door. You just first start is you just go and sit in this box. And then you're going to gradually start moving to the door, but in stages. And there is as many stages as you need to. So remember, if she's sitting and she lays down, that's her way of saying, oh, I'm really in the groove, I'm feeling this. If she's sitting and stands up, that's saying, I'm getting ready to bark. So that tells you that you need to slow down and make that one step into 2 smaller steps. So the steps, let me go step-by-step process of going through the door. So first step is getting her to go to the sit in the box. Second step is you're going to take a half step towards the door, return, yes, and give her a treat. And I do each one of these every time I go to a new one, I do it 3 times in a row. So I do a half step, return, yes, treat. Half step, return, yes, treat. Half step, return, yes, treat. Half step, second step, return, yes, treat. Half step, second step, return. And make sure when you're returning the same number of steps back to the original position. So you're going to do step A is the door, sitting in the box at the door. Step 2 is taking 1 step. Step 3, I went from A to letters to numbers. Step 3 is going to be the second step. Step 4 is the third step, or the kick as we did. Step 5 is turning your shoulders towards it. Step 6 is reaching 10% towards the door. And each one of these do 3 times in a row, and as long as she stays in a sit, then I can go to 20% reach towards the door handle. And then pull back, yes, and you go back to a neutral wherever you started each time. And eventually you go to, so I usually do 10% reach the door, 20% reach the door, then I go to 50%. If she has a problem with 50%, go to 30 or 40%. Always back up to a previous level of success, practice that one a couple times, and then move forward. The next one would be actually reaching all the way to the door but not making contact. The next step would be making contact, very light sound. And then the next step would be a little bit louder sound. Next step, a little louder sound. Eventually, as loud as you can make that. Next step would be that sound, and then turning the lock inside the doorknob. And then again, if she stays seated, yes, return back to her, give her the treat, and then take those steps to the door, reach the handle, jiggle it, and then unlock it. Next step, when you do that, move to the deadbolt. So again, flip that. And again, you're doing all these steps in a row, but stopping when she, at the step that you've proceeded up to. So now you're at the deadbolt. Lock it, return all the way back to her, give it a treat. Then next time, go and unlock it. So 1 sound each time, because you normally don't go click, click. You want to do it as realistic, as lifelike as possible, because that's what we're proofing against. Eventually, you get to the point where you've done all the handle. Then you open it a 1/4 of an inch, close it, and then return back to her. Do that 3 times. Then open it 2 inches, close it, return back to her. 4 inches, 6 inches. Then I usually do a foot. Then I do about a 1/2 foot each time, provided she's doing well. Don't do it if people are walking up. Don't do it if there's things that are there are people working on the shrubberies or other things that are going to contribute things. Make sure nobody's eating food. You're not preparing food. We don't want her to be distracted by other things. We want to focus exclusively on what you're doing. Eventually, you'll be able to open that door all the way, and she's sitting in or laying down the box. So the next step would be to have one of you guys practice going out the door. So one of you just goes out the door, close it, and stand right against the door so she can't see at the window. And the other one says door, walks her up there, sits her down, walks over all the steps to the door, and then opens the door, and she sees one of you guys. She already saw you, so she's not super excited she has to race to you. When you open the door, the person outside shouldn't say anything to her. We're just going to stand there. And if she really is, if she's running towards you, that person maybe turns to the side or has his back or her back to the door. So when they open the door, she sees their back. So we want to do whatever we can to make it easy for her to do whatever we want for that particular step in the process. Now, once you got to the point where you can go and open the door, then you don't have to do all the individual little steps and jiggle the deadbolt and jiggle that. But until you get to the point where you can open the door and she's looking at the person, she's not racing out or barking towards them, repeat all the little steps. And that helps her understand methodically what we're doing. But eventually she's just like, yeah, you go and open the door and you don't have to do the deadbolt. Eventually, the next stage is you'd have the person go out there and then wait maybe 1 or 2 minutes. And then you go in the bathroom, brush your teeth, and come out, and then have them knock on the door. And again, they should knock very lightly and do it the same way we did in the video above. A little bit of a knock. If she stays in the place, yes, you go back to her, give her a treat. A little bit louder knock, louder knock, louder knock. And so I would actually probably go through all the process of opening the door first, like I described in this video. Then when we have the person outside, I would go through the same process, but, or I would change the process. I would put her in the door and then, let me reframe that. So then we would have the person just exit. You guys, the other person's just hanging out with her. And then that person lightly knocks. You touch your treat to her nose, walk her to the box, and then go through the process of opening the door. And that person's going to go to a louder 1 fingernail, and then and it's really loud with 1. And then, go back to 2, or however many knocks people normally do when they come to your door. You can proof as many different variants, hey, yes, as you need to. But we want it, because that's what we're doing is we're recreating what actually happens. You're going to be hanging out, there's going to be a knock, then you go over there, put her in the position, and then you're going to go and open the door. So that's, I guess, the person would go knock, you go put her in the place, and then you go through all those steps leading up to opening the door. And knocking louder, louder, louder. Eventually, that person goes out the door and they wait a little bit longer, and that's when you would go to the bathroom and go to the other room and sit down for a sec, and then they come and knock on the door. You go put her in the position. As long as she doesn't bark, then you open the door and that person's there. Then they go out there for a little bit longer. So you want to have a delay of the person leaves and waits out there. First they go out, and as soon as the door's closed, they knock. But eventually you want to have them go out there and they're waiting like 5 minutes, and then you're knocking. And then they're knocking and they're not doing the light one. They're eventually just going, and that was a great job of not barking. Yes. So methodically go through that whole process until you can get to the point where you open the door and the person is already, it's one of you guys, and already been left for 5 minutes. The next step would be to have a friend come over. So you're both inside and you're doing the same thing, but with a friend that she knows. Now, if she has difficulty with that, have the friend come over, sit inside, hang out for a little bit, and have them leave, and then they can go out, and you can practice this a couple times. Try to keep it like 2 to 3 minutes max practice each practice session. And then maybe you and your friend hang out and do some stuff. And then after about 15 minutes, you practice again. So you maybe practice 2 or 3 times with that friend in 1 to 3 minute practice sessions with about 10 or 15 minutes in between. So you can invite a friend to come over and have them over for the course of an hour or so and have 3 or 4 practice sessions incorporated in there. Make sure you're practicing this at least once a day with yourselves, but I'd like to see at least twice a day if we can, because the more frequent dog training and modification is very much a numbers game. Let me see, the embracing thing. So for the humping, so again, you're just gonna turn to the person, return back, give a treat. Same principle with the door. And eventually you're embracing longer and longer, and instead of her humping, she's just sitting there waiting for you to get it done, hugging or kissing, and then she gets a treat afterwards. June, sit, sit, June, sit. Yes. Isn't she a good-looking dog? My friend Amanda says she's gorgeous. I must agree. All right, well, this is my friend June, and these are some. This is her roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it. Isn't that right, sweet girl?
Yes.